In fighting games, there's nothing more terrifying than an attack you literally cannot block. No matter what you do, no matter how perfect your defense is, the damage is coming. Mortal Kombat has some of the most infamous unblockables in fighting game history, and today I'm breaking down the best ones. But we're starting with the one that should be scary, but just isn't anymore. Scorpion Spear. Scorpion Spear is the most iconic move in Mortal Kombat history. Back, low punch, and a rope dart harpoon flies across the screen, impales your opponent through the chest, and drags them right to you for a free hit. It's brutal, it's unblockable, and nobody is afraid of it. Here's the thing, the spear has been in every single main Mortal Kombat game since the original 1992 release. Everyone. The only exception is Mortal Kombat 3, where Scorpion wasn't even on the roster. That means this move has had over 30 years of competitive documentation, 30 years of players labbing it, punishing it, and learning exactly when it's coming. At this point, throwing out a raw spear in a competitive match is less of a power move and more of a polite invitation to get full combo punished. But that doesn't mean it's weak, not even close. In Mortal Kombat 1, meterless optimal combos using the spear deal roughly 36% damage. Spend 3 bars and you're looking at 50%. Half your opponent's health bar, gone, because they got hit by a move that's been in the game since the Bush administration. The first one, the reason nobody fears the spear isn't because the damage is bad. It's because every competitive player on the planet knows the startup frames, the recovery windows, and exactly how to make Scorpion regret throwing it out at the wrong time. The spear doesn't catch people off guard anymore. It catches people who aren't paying attention, and at tournament level, everybody is paying attention, which is honestly kind of beautiful. An unblockable attack that's been around for 3 decades has naturally balanced itself through sheer community knowledge. No patch required, no developer intervention, just thousands of players collectively deciding, yeah, we figured this one out. The spear went from a casual killer to a respected neutral tool, something you throw out with purpose and timing rather than panic and prayer. It's the least infamous unblockable on this list for exactly that reason. Scorpion Spear isn't broken, it's graduated, but if you think an unblockable that politely asks for permission is as bad as it gets, wait until you hear what happens when Jax punches the ground. Jax, ground pound. Jax's ground pound has been around since Mortal Kombat 2. Back then it was a simple command grab. You punch the ground, the opponent goes up, nothing complicated. But here's the thing, in Mortal Kombat 1, Jax isn't even a main fighter anymore. He's a cameo. And somehow, that made his ground pound more dangerous than it's ever been in 30 years. Let me explain how this works, because the mechanics are genuinely impressive. When you call Jax as a cameo, he slowly walks on screen to perform his classic unblockable ground punch. It costs half your cameo gauge, and the gauge immediately starts recharging at a moderate rate once the move connects. Simple enough. But if the move whiffs, things get interesting. The gauge turns purple and Jax just stays on screen. He'll attempt the ground pound up to 2 more times, hunting for the connection until he either lands it, gets hit out of it, or finally gives up. He's basically a heat-seeking missile made of metal arms and bad intentions. Now here's where it gets complicated. When Jax successfully grabs the opponent's cameo, he deals guaranteed unscalable damage. He disables the opponent's assist capabilities entirely. He prevents breakers until the grab ends. You're just stuck there watching your health bar evaporate while your cameo sits in the corner doing absolutely nothing to help you, and it gets worse. Jax can extend his throw grab up to 2 times. Each extension costing 1 bar of super meter. The first enhancement bumps damage from 11% to 16%. The second pushes it to 21%. If you catch someone holding up block and land the throw punish, you're looking at over 343 damage for 2 bars of meter, all unbreakable, all guaranteed, which is, not ideal for the person on the receiving end. The real magic happens when you pair Jax with Omni-Man. Omni-Man's Viltrumite stance is completely invulnerable to ground pound, meaning you can have Omni-Man applying pressure and stance, while Jax threatens the ground punch simultaneously. The opponent has to pick which threat to deal with, and picking wrong means eating massive damage from one or the other. It's a layered mix-up scenario that turns every interaction into a lose-lose guessing game. What's fascinating is how the community actually feels about this move. Nobody hates it. Players respect ground pound the way you respect a well-trained guard dog. It's clearly powerful, clearly threatening, but it follows rules. It has counterplay. You can hit Jax out of his approach. You can jump to avoid the pound. The gauge cost means you can't just spam it endlessly. Every piece of the design says this move is strong, but you earned it. Jax went from being the guy who punches the ground to being the invisible presence that reshapes entire matches without ever being selected as the main character. That's not just an evolution. That's a promotion. But if you think a guy slowly walking on screen is scary, wait until you see what happens when Noob Saibot just appears behind you with zero warning. Noob Saibot, Teleport Slam. Before he was a shadow, he was a man. Bihan, the original Sub-Zero, murdered by Scorpion and then resurrected by the necromancer Quan Chi into something far worse. Stripped of his humanity, granted power over darkness itself, and given a new name, Noob Saibot. And apparently, the first thing he did with his new shadow powers was figure out how to teleport behind you and slam you into the ground so hard your skeleton files a restraining order. The Teleport Slam has been Noob's signature move since Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 back in 1995, and it survived all the way through Mortal Kombat 11 in 2019. That's nearly 25 years of one move terrorizing players across every generation of console hardware. The original version was genuinely unhinged. Noob would grab his opponent, teleport, and then just start bouncing them off the ground repeatedly until they essentially exploded. No combo counter, no damage scaling, just violence until the health bar said, stop. Here's where the Teleport Slam separates itself from most unblockables on this list. It's not about frame advantage or forcing you into a specific blocking position. The move bypasses blocking entirely because Noob literally teleports behind or above you during the execution. You can't block something that's already repositioned itself to ignore your guard. And because it's a teleport, the move works from virtually anywhere on screen. Full screen? Doesn't matter. You could be standing in the corner feeling safe, and Noob just appears behind you like he's checking your browser history. The damage potential is staggering. One maxed amplified version of the Teleport Slam deals 20 hits for 746 damage. 746. That's not a combo route involving 6 different inputs and a prayer. That's one move, amplified, deleting your health bar like it has a personal vendetta. But here's the thing. The Teleport Slam's greatest strength is also what keeps it from being completely broken at the highest level. Its power comes from unpredictability, not from being genuinely unreactable. Players who've spent hundreds of hours fighting Noob learn to read the setups, anticipate the timing, and punish the recovery. The move is best canceled into from a stagger state, where the opponent is already guessing wrong. Stack that uncertainty with the teleport, and suddenly your opponent is making 3 reads at once, and failing all of them. At tournament level, experienced players can handle it. They've seen it 1,000 times. Everyone else? Not so much. In casual and semi-competitive play, the Teleport Slam is a nightmare. Players who don't have the hours to study Noob's patterns just see a shadow appear behind them, hear the slam, and watch half their health bar evaporate. You're not losing to frame data. You're losing to a dead man who refuses to fight you from the front. And honestly, that's kind of perfect for Noob Saibot. A murdered warrior resurrected into shadow, attacking from angles you can't predict, punishing you for not knowing he was coming. The lore and the mechanics line up so cleanly it almost feels intentional. Almost. But if the Teleport Slam terrorizes you because you can't see it coming, wait until you meet a move that you can see coming and still can't do anything about. Goro, Stomp. Most fighting game defense boils down to one question. Do I block high or do I block low? That's the whole game. Stand block catches overheads, crouch block catches lows, and everything in between is just reading your opponent. Goro doesn't care about any of that. Goro wants you to look up. The Shokan Prince, former Mortal Kombat tournament champion, half-dragon nightmare with 4 arms and 0 patience, has a stomp attack that completely rewrites how you think about defense. Instead of worrying about left-right or high-low mix-ups, you now have to worry about the sky. the vertical plane, a direction that most fighting game characters politely agree to ignore. Goro looked at that gentleman's agreement and stomped on it. Literally. Here's the thing, the Shokan Stomp isn't just a simple move you can dismiss. As a Kameo fighter in Mortal Kombat 1, Goro can be called in to drop from the sky during your main character's pressure, meaning the stomp layers on top of whatever your point character is already doing. So you're not just defending against one attack, you're defending against a mix-up sandwich where a giant four-armed man is the bread, the meat, and the condiments, all coming from above your head, where your standard blocking instincts do absolutely nothing. And before you dismiss this as some casual level gimmick, let me point out that Goro Kameo has been a consistent presence in competitive play. Tournament players, people who practice defense for hours a day, have been getting stomped by a giant four-armed man falling out of the sky on stream in bracket with money on the line, which is, you know, not ideal for the just dodge it argument. The community frustration around this move is genuinely funny. Forum threads and Reddit posts dedicated entirely to asking how to deal with Goro's stomp pop up constantly, because enough people have zero idea what's happening to them that the community has to keep re-explaining it. When your move generates its own recurring tech support threads, you've achieved a very specific level of infamy. Not ban-worthy, not ignorable, just persistently, annoyingly effective in a way that makes people furious. The developers have clearly been keeping an eye on it too. Goro's Kameo assist has received balance adjustments across patches, tweaking timing windows and recovery frames, which means even the dev team acknowledges this move keeps producing problems they didn't fully anticipate. Every time they thought they had it dialed in, some new setup crawled out of the lab like a bug nobody invited. The real problem with Goro's stomp isn't raw damage or broken frame data, it's the mental tax. Every second you're fighting against a team running Goro Kameo, part of your brain has to be allocated to the possibility that a 2,000-pound half-dragon is about to become a meteor. That's processing power you can't spend on reading the point character's grabs, pressure strings, or actual game plan. Goro doesn't just hit you with the stomp, he hits you with the threat of the stomp, and that threat warps the entire match around it. It's the kind of move that makes you tilt. Not because it's the strongest thing in the game, but because it feels like it shouldn't work. You know it's coming. You've seen it 40 times. And somehow, it still lands. Because your brain briefly forgot that fighting games can involve looking at the ceiling. But if you think a giant man falling on you from above is frustrating, wait until you hear about a horror movie icon who just walks up and grabs you by the throat. Jason Voorhees. Choke. Jason Voorhees was the first DLC character in Mortal Kombat 10, arriving through the combat pack like a machete through a camp counselor's torso. And certain variations of this character made him one of only 2 fighters in the entire game, alongside Bo Raicho, to possess fully unblockable combo strings. Not partially unblockable, not unblockable under specific conditions, entirely unblockable. In a roster of dozens of characters, 2 of them got to ignore the block button, and one of them was the guy from Friday the 13th. The choke itself is a high command grab. You cannot block it. That's the whole pitch. It functions as an unblockable grab that catches standing opponents clean, though it can whiff against jumping or ducking players. The enhanced version, Choke Slam, grants armor on top of everything else, meaning Jason can absorb hits while reaching for your throat, which is, you know, not ideal. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. During the choke, the game does something that no other unblockable on this list does. While Jason has his hand wrapped around your neck, your run and dash abilities are completely disabled. That alone would be annoying. But they also reverse your controls. Left becomes right, right becomes left. Your entire directional input gets flipped like someone rotated your controller 180 degrees while you weren't looking. The only things that still work normally are blocking, throwing, and X-ray attacks. Everything else? Backwards. You're trying to move away from the undead serial killer, and your character walks directly into him. Hey, where are you going? Oh, toward the giant man who wants to kill me? Cool. Great decision, Thumbs. This is the detail that makes Jason's choke special. Most unblockables just deal damage. This one disorients you. It gets inside your head the same way Jason gets inside a cabin in the movies. Slowly, inevitably, and with zero regard for your feelings about it. You're not just losing health, you're losing your ability to think clearly for the next few seconds. fumbling inputs like you've never held a controller before. NetherRealm essentially turned a fighting game mechanic into a jump scare, and the balance team clearly knew this thing was a problem because it caught nerfs. Jason's down. Forward punch got adjusted from -2 on block to -4, making his pressure slightly more punishable. Chokeslam and Temple Slam were both given 2 hits of armor to compensate, letting Jason absorb incoming damage during startup. So they nerfed one thing and buffed another, which is the developer equivalent of taking away someone's sword and handing them a slightly shorter sword that's also on fire. Here's the thing that really sells this move though. It's not just mechanically strong, it's thematically perfect. Jason Voorhees is supposed to be the character you can't stop. He walks through bullets in the movies. He survives everything. He doesn't run because he doesn't need to. And NetherRealm translated that energy directly into gameplay. When Jason grabs you, your options shrink. Your controls betray you. Your defensive tools get stripped away. For a brief, horrible moment, you experience what every camp counselor in every Friday the 13th movie has experienced. The realization that running isn't going to work. Only 2 characters in MKX history had fully unblockable combo strings. Jason was one of them, and his version didn't just hurt you, it made you forget which direction away was. That's not a fighting game mechanic. That's psychological warfare with a health bar attached. But if you think reversed controls and a choking hand are bad, wait until you hear about a move so infamous it literally carried a player to grand finals of a major tournament. One move, one input, infinite rage from the entire community. Shiva, Dragon Drop. Let me tell you about the time a single move broke an entire community's sanity. Not a character, not a strategy, one move. Shiva's Dragon Drop in Mortal Kombat 11 was so absurdly dominant that online ranked matches became essentially unwatchable. People weren't playing Mortal Kombat anymore. They were playing Dragon Drop Simulator. Here's how Dragon Drop functions. Shiva leaps high into the air, completely off-screen, then comes crashing down directly onto her opponent. But she doesn't just land on them once. She proceeds to jump up and down, crushing them under her bare feet like she's trying to flatten a cardboard box for recycling. The move is unblockable, and to make matters worse, Shiva could delay the landing, meaning you couldn't even time your dodge consistently. You just had to guess every single time. Now, in most fighting games, an unblockable move exists as a high-risk, high-reward tool. You commit to it, and if it misses, you get punished. That's the deal. Dragon Drop didn't care about the deal. The move tracked so aggressively and had such a generous hit region that dodging it felt like trying to sidestep rain. You could dash forward, you could dash backward, you could try jumping, and half the time Shiva would just adjust midair and land on your head anyway. It was less of a special move and more of a lifestyle choice. So naturally, people took this to its logical conclusion. Online lobbies became infested with Shiva players who did nothing but Dragon Drop on repeat. Match after match, round after round, the same move. Players were climbing the ranked ladder doing literally nothing else. Thousands of hours of lab time, matchup knowledge, and execution skill from opponents, and all of it rendered completely irrelevant by one person jumping up and down. You didn't need combos. You didn't need footsies. You needed one button and the emotional detachment of a sociopath. The community lost its mind, and I mean that literally. One competitive player was so furious that they changed their entire username to a protest name, specifically calling out Dragon Drop, characterizing it as a teleport stomp. That's not a heated forum post. That's not a tweet. That's someone altering their competitive identity out of pure spite, which is, dedication. The debate that followed was genuinely heated. This wasn't the usual nerf this character discussion. People were questioning whether Dragon Drop should exist at all. The argument was simple. In a fighting game, skill expression is supposed to matter. Reads, reactions, execution, adaptation. Dragon Drop bypassed all of it. You weren't outplaying your opponent. You were just selecting the correct move from a menu of one and watching them try to solve an unsolvable puzzle. The competitive community drew a hard line. This wasn't a strong move that needed adjustment. This was a violation of what fighting games are supposed to be. NetherRealm eventually responded, and the patch notes read like an apology letter. On May 13th, 2021, Shiva's health was reduced from 1,000 to 950. Dragon Drop's hit region was narrowed. A set delay time was added when the move was delayed, removing the ability to freestyle the timing, and 30 additional recovery frames were slapped onto the move when it missed or hit armor. That's not a balance adjustment. That's a surgical intervention. Every single change targeted exactly what made Dragon Drop oppressive, which tells you NetherRealm knew precisely what the problem was. But even after the nerf, the community remained divided. A significant portion of players argued that nerfing Dragon Drop wasn't enough. They wanted it gone, removed entirely. Their reasoning was straightforward. You can nerf the numbers all you want, but the fundamental design of the move still rewards gimmick execution over actual skill expression. A slightly worse version of a fundamentally broken concept is still a broken concept. It's like putting a speed limit on a car that drives itself into people. Cool, it's slower now. Still a problem. Dragon Drop became a symbol, not just of one overpowered move, but of the tension between casual accessibility and competitive integrity that every fighting game has to navigate. And Shiva paid the price for it. But if you think one character's stomp caused problems, wait until you hear about Shao Kahn's hammer and what happens when the Emperor of Outworld decides blocking shouldn't exist for anyone. Shiva had one broken move, one single input that ruined online play for months. Shao Kahn has a broken state. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a house fire and a nuclear meltdown. Here's the thing about Shao Kahn in MK11. For most of the game's lifespan, he was kind of a joke. Big, slow, punishable on everything, the kind of character you picked when you wanted to style on someone or didn't care about winning. Then the buffs came, and they didn't just make him viable. They made him one of the most frustrating characters to deal with in the entire game. Let me explain. Shao Kahn has access to two taunts, Ridicule and Humiliate, that activate a buff state. Post-buff, these taunts recovered significantly faster than they used to, and the enhanced state lasted long enough to completely shift the momentum of a round. Doesn't sound like much on paper. On screen, it changes everything. When the buff activates, Shao Kahn's damage output jumps dramatically. His moves gain armor, his specials hit harder, and his pressure becomes genuinely suffocating. He goes from a slow, punishable gimmick to a character who can bully you into corners and delete your health bar with 2 good reads. So now you're the opponent, and you're staring down a roided out Emperor with a giant hammer who just powered up, and you need to figure out what to do. Let's walk through your options. Option 1. Try to zone him out. He armors through your projectiles and closes the gap. Cool. Option 2. Play defensive and wait it out. He uses the taunt again, extending the buff window and building even more momentum. Also cool. Option 3. Rush him down before he taunts. He has enough tools to keep you honest at mid-range. Very cool. Option 4. Respect his pressure on block. His enhanced strings chip you down, and his throws become terrifying. Incredibly cool. Every option has a losing side. The decision tree isn't impossible, but it's heavily tilted. You're not making comfortable reads. You're picking which bad situation you'd rather deal with, but here's where it gets genuinely frustrating. Shao Kahn's corner pressure in the buffed state becomes borderline inescapable. His strings wall carry naturally, and once you're in the corner, his mix between throws, overhead hammer strikes, and staggered pressure creates a vortex that most characters simply don't have the tools to escape cleanly. One wrong guess leads to another setup, which leads to another guess, which leads to death. It loops, not literally infinitely, but practically close enough. The damage per touch in his buffed state is so high that 2 correct reads can kill from half health. The word vortex in fighting games is supposed to describe strong pressure. With buffed Shao Kahn, it described something closer to a hostage situation in a game with active tournament support and a professional competitive scene. That's not a balance oversight, that's a balance headache, and the community noticed immediately. Competitive players started calling his buffed state one of the most oppressive things in MK11, and that's a game that already had Shiva's Dragon Drop and Jackie Briggs running around. Online ranked became a genuine test of patience, because you couldn't just play your game against Shao Kahn. You had to play his game. You had to keep him from getting the taunt off. Or you were dealing with a character whose risk-reward ratio flipped completely in his favor. Think about that for a second. The entire competitive strategy against Shao Kahn wasn't learn the matchup. It was don't let him taunt or accept that the next 10 seconds of your life are going to be miserable. That's not a strong character. That's a design problem wearing a skull helmet. The taunts themselves became the most important moves in his kit. Land a ridicule or humiliate. And for the duration of that buff, you're playing a different game than your opponent. They're playing Mortal Kombat. You're playing everything I do, hits harder, recovers faster, and has armor, and you're in the corner, which is, you know, not ideal for the person on the other side of the screen. Shiva's Dragon Drop was a single move that broke online play. Shao Kahn's buff state was an entire system that warped how you had to approach the match. One move versus one state. One problem versus every problem simultaneously. But if Shao Kahn represents the peak of buffed state insanity through raw pressure and suffocating offense, the next entry on this list broke the game in a completely different way, one that competitive players are still arguing about. Kenshi Spirit Charge. Every other unblockable on this list works because it's cheap or broken, or because the developers forgot to playtest something. Kenshi Spirit Charge is infamous for the opposite reason. It's infamous because it's brilliant. Here's the setup. In Mortal Kombat 1, Kenshi doesn't just project a shadow of himself like he did in previous games. He summons his ancestor Sento, an entirely separate entity that rams into the opponent with a shoulder charge. That's a meaningful distinction, because Sento isn't a projectile. Sento isn't an animation. Sento is a second character on the screen with his own attacks, his own positioning, and his own recovery timers. And when Kenshi and Sento attack at the same time from different angles, the opponent has to block two independent threats simultaneously, which is, you know, not possible. The human brain can track one attacker, it can react to one set of mix-ups. But when Kenshi is pressing buttons in your face, while Sento is charging from a completely different position, the blocking system literally cannot account for both threats at once. You're forced to pick which one you want to get hit by. That's not a mix-up. That's a hostage negotiation where both hostage takers have guns pointed at you from opposite sides of the room. But here's where it gets genuinely oppressive. The Kenshi block Infinite. This is the single most technically demanding setup on this entire list, and it works like clockwork in the hands of someone who understands it. Sento performs his standing 3-hit sequence. There's a gap after the second hit, which would normally give the opponent a window to breathe, except Kenshi covers that gap with his own 1-2-2 string, which is completely gapless. So while Sento recovers from his cooldown, Kenshi is right there applying seamless pressure. Then Sento comes back. Then Kenshi covers again. Then Sento comes back. It loops indefinitely. Hey, can I have a turn? No. How about now? Also no. The opponent is just standing there holding block, watching their health bar stay frozen while their sanity drains in real time. They can't jump. They can't poke. They can't do anything except sit there and wait for Kenshi to either mess up or decide he's done. It's like being stuck in a conversation you can't leave. The catch, and this is what separates Kenshi from every other entry we've talked about, is that after 5 or 6 repetitions of the block infinite loop, experienced players have to transition into a low overhead mix-up. If you get greedy and keep looping, Sento disappears mid-pressure and the whole thing falls apart. So you need the awareness to recognize when the window is closing, the execution to maintain the loop without dropping it, and the game sense to know exactly when to cash out into real damage. That's not a gimmick, that's a performance, and the community knows it. Nobody complains about Kenshi's block infinite the way they complained about Dragon Drop or Shao Kahn's Rage Mode Hammer. Nobody's petitioning NetherRealm to patch it out, because everyone understands that pulling this off requires genuine dual character management. You're not mashing one input and watching the opponent suffer. You're piloting 2 fighters simultaneously, managing cooldown timers in real time, and making split-second decisions about when to extend pressure and when to convert. If you drop the timing by even a few frames, the whole sequence collapses and you eat a full combo, punish for your trouble. Most players who attempt this in a real match will drop it within 3 reps and immediately regret the decision. This is what 30 years of unblockable design evolution looks like. Think about where we started. Scorpion Spear. 1 input, 1 projectile, unblockable but completely reactable. A move so well understood that it became a neutral tool. rather than a threat. Then we watched Jax pound the ground, Noob teleport through reality, Goro stomp from orbit, Jason grab people by the throat like a horror movie, Shiva break an entire competitive scene with one move, and Shao Kahn turn rage mode into a war crime. Every single one of those unblockables operated on the same basic principle. One character does one thing that you can't block. Some were fair, some were disasters, but they were all simple. One input, one problem. Kenshi threw that entire philosophy in the trash. His unblockable doesn't come from a single overpowered move. It comes from the interaction between two entities working in perfect coordination. It's not brute force, it's architecture, and it represents exactly what NetherRealm learned from every mistake on this list. Don't make unblockables cheap. Make them earn. Make the player work for the reward instead of handing them a free win button. The Block Infinite is technically the most oppressive tool we've covered today. It is a true infinite that locks the opponent out of playing the game entirely, but nobody hates it because the skill floor to execute it is so high that if someone pulls it off against you, you don't feel cheated. You feel outplayed. You feel like you just watched someone solve a Rubik's Cube while simultaneously beating you up. And honestly, that's the best thing an unblockable can be. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.